All right. This video is going on my Watachi Running Free channel only. And for those of you, this is one of my smaller channels, so you guys are getting a special preview. That's all I can say. Folks, there's a reason why my blood family thinks I'm dangerous. There's a reason why the government thinks I'm dangerous. There's a reason why many people still, even today, at 60 years old, been through 3 heart surgeries, and none of those heart surgeries fixed my heart, folks. Not that I went through 3 heart surgeries that I had to file $150,000 worth of bankruptcies over. But none of those heart surgeries fixed my heart. You don't think anger and shit can come from that? That was before I was 42. 43, I had to file bankruptcy on 3 heart attacks, 3 heart surgeries. Or no, by the time I was about 48, I had to. Me and my wife, I destroyed my wife's being, her credit. And folks, my wife, but when we got together, got married. By the time we got married, my wife was working. She wasn't before that. There was things and reasons, and she had two children, and I'm not going into all the stories on why or where she was before I met her. But God put me and her together, because with me and her being together, it made us both better people. It made me a better person with God putting her in my life. And she claims it made her a better person. Well, I told her because I didn't have no kids. I was around 27, 28 years old when I met her. She was the father of my 2 children, was one of my best friends. He didn't want the children. He didn't want his girlfriend. They were never married. And he shoved us together as much as God put me and my wife in the same place. There is no doubt about me and my wife being together was God ordained. There is no doubt about that, folks. She was from a part of the country that I had been through on the interstate. Rocky Mountain, Colorado shit. Way back in the Rocky Mountains. I was born in basically Nashville, Tennessee, and most of my family lived in the Smoky Mountains. Well, people, we found each other, and my wife worked. I told her, I said, look, I love you, and I love your daughter and your son, but I ain't making enough money. I can't make enough money by myself. I was working, and at this time, folks, I was working for my dad for $10 an hour, folks. I was working for my father for $10 an hour, and I couldn't pay for 2 kids and a wife and all that on $10 an hour. Not even back then, folks. And so I told her, I said, look, you know what, we can do this, but you're going to have to start working too. I don't deal with welfare, food stamps, all that. I don't do that shit. I'm not going to put up with that shit. They control you with that shit. My wife agreed. She didn't want to be on it either. But at that time, my mom and dad's generation was the last generation that a man could make enough money to pay the bills. They made sure of that. Guarantee you, I've lived it. My generation was the first generation they forced. Maybe, what was that after us? Gen Y or some shit. I don't know what that generation was. But it was forced more on them than us. But it was forced on us, folks. And my wife went to work. I was working. And my wife landed good jobs. And I'm telling you what, she worked for Intel, folks. Her bonuses ended up being stocks in Intel. The computers. She was working for them. She's worked in restaurants when she first started working and stuff. And then she got into a little bit of manufacturing. And then she got into, with Intel, she was doing quality control and stuff like that. And from that point, she got into the medical field. And she's audited not only doctors and insurance companies, she's done this shit for about the last 20 years. This is why, folks, there's certain things I say that are facts that you might not get off your TV. Not only does she work in the same field doing this thing, my daughter-in-law, and I know so many people in this field that they haven't been able to lie to me from the get-go. These were videos I put out on my channels. I proved it. Folks, my wife, the only reason we are still together today is because my wife put up with some complete and utter anger, evilness, and bullshit. Not physically towards her or her kids in any way. I never did anything like that. This is me being truthful with you, folks. But at times, people thought my wife and my kids were dead. after a night of me fucking blowing up off of drug rage and alcohol. Now, I had a lot of rage in me. Alcohol and drugs didn't do no good. Didn't help, to be honest. But my wife, and my mom even said something similar to the same thing about my father that made me. And she said, I saw something in him that nobody else saw. My wife claimed the same thing. And make no doubt, folks, my wife left me a couple of times. And I know of at least once that my son looked at her and said, what you mean? What do you mean? I'll never see Brian again? Because my kids, I never told them to call me Dad. Because they knew they had a father that produced them. And actually, my daughter was the oldest. She's the only one that kind of remembers a little bit about him, but not much. My son don't even remember him. But I've never told them to call me Dad. I told them, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you call me Brian, if that's what you feel comfortable calling me. And so they did. They always called me Brian. And actually, up until, maybe 10 years ago, my son started calling me old man because he's bigger than me, and he was in the Marines and all this, so he started getting cocky and started calling me old man. But once my granddaughter came along, I'm Pop today. Guys, these are just my stories. It seems like some of you guys want to hear this stuff. And I'm not lying to you, folks. People tell me that they hear my stories and say, man, there's a book in there somewhere. You need to write a book. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't one of you guys make the money off of it? And I'll sit here and tell the story. How about that? But you got to remember, the story don't title the title Watachi Running Freak. Because that's just a stage name. The name is Brian Grooms. That's not as pretty of a title, is it? Nah. Not even David, my first name. David Grooms. That ain't even a tough enough name. Watachi's a tough name. That's a Watachi Running Freak. There's a book title. I understand that. Maybe that book might, if I live long enough, maybe it'll even be what do they call that? Oh man, shit, I can't remember the name of it. Autobiography, that's it. What do you guys think? Well, I'm talking about you guys that's been around for a while, heard some of the stories. Think there's a book there for Watachi. Think there's a book there that somebody might buy. Maybe there is. Who knows? Let's watch and see. Love you guys. Till the next one.